Welcome to the Explainer. All right, let's just dive right in. Today, we've got a highly practical, absolute no-fluff guide designed specifically for you, the San Diego homeowner. We're decoding sagging roofs. We're going to look at what actually causes them, what they're really going to cost to fix in 2026, and most importantly, how to stop that sinking feeling you get when you look up at your house.
So here is our roadmap. First, we'll figure out if that sag is a true emergency. Then we'll look at San Diego's unique roofing issues, show you exactly how to read your roofline, break down those 2026 repair costs, and finally, walk through the right way to actually fix the thing. I've got to ask, have you noticed a wave in your roof lately? Maybe you were just pulling into the driveway or out walking the dog, and you spotted that dreaded dip from the street. Yeah, it's a totally gut-sinking moment, because a sag means something structural under the roofing has actually moved. And honestly, here's the hard truth. It doesn't just magically move back on its own. It is never just a cosmetic issue.
All right, Section 1. Is it an emergency? Let's go ahead and tackle the absolute most pressing fear every homeowner has when they see a sag. I mean, is the house going to fall down? Is this a drop everything and evacuate kind of emergency?
Well, you can go ahead and step away from the panic button. Unlike in snowy climates where a sag can literally lead to an immediate collapse from heavy snow loads, the reality here in San Diego is completely different. Because we just don't get that heavy snow, a roof caving in without any warning is incredibly rare. Instead, what we're looking at is a progressive issue. It's things like fasteners slowly working loose over time, leaks starting up, and the damage just kind of creeping along, growing year by year.
Now, having said that, there are exactly 3 specific situations where a sag actually warrants a same-week call to a roofer. Number 1, if the sag just appeared suddenly or if it grew visibly in a single season. Number 2, if there is an active leak right over it. Why? Because water is actively weakening a structure that has already failed. And number 3, if that dip showed up right after you had some attic work done, like a remodel or a new HVAC system. Because a cut truss is just going to keep getting worse and worse under that new load.
Moving right into Section 2, San Diego's unique causes. Let's take a look at the underlying structural diseases that actually cause these symptoms, because they are heavily tied to our specific local history.
Okay, so the crucial point here is that slapping heavy 1980s concrete tiles onto older 1950s frames that were built for lighter shingles, that is a massive, unique cause of sagging in our area. Think about it. Those older pre-1980s 2x4 rafters, they were sized for light wood shake. Adding concrete tile literally triples the dead load. The framing might carry it for a while, but it deflects over the decades. The other main culprits we see are stacked roofing layers adding tons of hidden weight, rotted decking from our beautiful but damp coastal marine layer, and of course framing that was cut or damaged by somebody during past home modifications.
Which brings us to Section 3, reading your roofline. Knowing the causes is great and all, but how do you actually know which one is happening to your house? Well, let's turn you into a structural detective right from your own sidewalk.
It's really like a giant puzzle where visual symptoms, like a wavy roof plane, translate directly into the structural reality underneath. For instance, if you're seeing soft dips between the rafters, that usually means decking failure or rot. Now, if you notice one long, continuous dip running right along the ridgeline, that's framing deflection, often from those undersized rafters trying to carry heavy tiles. If the sag is hanging down right at the edge or the eave, you are very likely looking at rotted rafter tails. And finally, if there's a dip in just one concentrated, isolated spot, that points to localized damage, like a single cut truss or maybe a point leak.
Keep in mind that structurally speaking, absolutely zero sag is considered acceptable by design. Zero. And while you can diagnose a whole lot just standing on the street, the pros are going to confirm your sidewalk diagnosis by actually getting up into the attic. They're looking for daylight, checking for moisture stains, and they'll measure that deflection precisely by running a string line right across the ridge. All right, moving on to Section 4, the real costs. It's time to tackle the absolute biggest anxiety producer for any homeowner. We need to talk about what this is actually going to cost you in 2026. So brace yourself. Right here, this is the typical price range for a repair. Now, I know what you're thinking, that is a massive swing. But that jump from $1,500 all the way up to $9,000 depends entirely on whether the sag is coming from rotted decking, which puts you at the lower end, or if it's the heavy framing underneath it failing, which pushes you up to the high end. It is a really wide range, but I promise there's a clear logic to it.
Let's break these numbers down, because as you'll see, repair costs just follow the root cause. Swapping out a sheet of decking during a re-roof, that's about $120 to $250.
Fixing rotted rafter tails will run you roughly $100 to $300 each. Now, localized framing repair hits the $1,500 to $4,000 mark. And a full framing reinforcement to handle tile weight, that's what pushes the bill between $4,000 and $9,000. Pro tip here. Always, always insist on a contract with clear, per-sheet unit pricing for decking. If you get a bid that handles a sagging roof with just some vague allowance, do yourself a favor and keep shopping.
There is a golden rule in the roofing world. Paying for access twice never pencils out. And honestly, this is exactly why structural fixes almost always happen alongside a full re-roof or a complete lift and relay of your tiles. Think about it. The materials have to come off to reach the decking anyway. You absolutely do not want to pay a crew to rip off your roofing, fix a sag, put the old, worn-out material back on, just to realize you need a totally new roof 3 years down the road.
All right, Section 5, the right way to fix. Let's take all this and see how it builds into a reliable step-by-step physical repair that ensures that dreaded dip never, ever comes back. Before a single hammer swings, we've got to talk about this specific requirement. You have to remember, roofers repair roofs, but engineers size framing. If your sag is caused by undersized or modified framing, the City of San Diego actually requires structural calculations from a licensed engineer before they'll even issue a repair permit. A really good roofer is going to tell you up front if your project requires this engineering step, and just a heads up, that usually adds about 2 to 4 weeks for plan review.
Following this exact sequence is absolutely critical. First, you need an attic inspection to pin down the exact cause. Second, you define the scope of the project. Third, you secure the engineering and permits. Fourth is the actual physical work, sistering the lumber or replacing the decking. And fifth, the actual roofing goes back on last. Guys, skipping these steps is the exact reason some unfortunate homes get re-roofed twice and somehow still end up sagging.
Now, before we wrap things up, we need to have a quick reality check about insurance. Standard California policies rarely cover this stuff, unless the sag is from a sudden, crazy event like a tree strike. But if the sagging is just from age, wear, rot, or that overloaded framing we talked about, insurance companies classify that as deferred maintenance. And unfortunately, that means the cost falls squarely on your shoulders.
So, is your roof hiding a heavy secret? I highly recommend you take a walk outside today and just look closely at your own roof line from the street. Because honestly, catching that subtle wave today could save you literally thousands of dollars tomorrow. Diagnosing it early and demanding the right sequence of repairs is the ultimate key to protecting your home. Thank you so much for diving into this structural breakdown with me, and we'll catch you on the next explainer.